Hello, I'm Hajira, and this is Human Machine Relations, a podcast about AI and new technologies in the PR industry. In this first episode, which looks into the future of work in the PR industry, I'm exploring a question that keeps every PR professional awake at night. In a world where AI can turn complex data sources into a press release in seconds, is there still a place for the human content expert? My MBA research focuses on the UK B2B electronics and industrial sector, which is a space that's defined by technical complexity and high stakes reputation management. But this AI content generation issue extends into the PR industry more broadly and to the entire workplace as well. The Microsoft 2026 Work Trends Annual Index shows that while IT and HR teams debate back and forth over the correct policies and implementation of AI has already arrived in our workflow. Employees are already using it, either with or without the knowledge of their superiors. Microsoft has coined the term the transformation paradox to describe the situation inside many businesses at the moment. They say employees are ready to reinvent how they work, but the system around them, the metrics, the incentives, and the norms, continues to reinforce the old way of working. And as the 2026 Cision Inside PR report shows, although PR professionals rate storytelling and content creation as the most important skill in comms at 69%, 68% are using AI to write or refine content. Could we be putting ourselves out of our own jobs in the near future? So for myself as a B2B content expert finishing up my MBA, the question is now, where do I go from here? So I did the obvious. I trained a Microsoft Copilot agent as a HR and recruitment expert to map out two potential paths for myself, either becoming an independent consultant on AI and communications or securing an in-house global communications director role. But to make sense of the viability of those two options and understand what's really happening in the industry today, I interviewed two former colleagues and senior technical content experts, Stuart Cording and Simon Crelly. For more detail on the academic theories of what we'll be discussing, please refer to section 1 of my analytical commentary in the link in the description. But to start off, I asked Stuart about how AI first appeared in the content production process and whether AI is affecting trust in the client-agency relationship.
Well, I think it's come upon us in several stages, and some of those have been invisible. And I'll start with Grammarly. When I started writing content, I was sort of unsure of my skills as an English writer. I'd written plenty of stuff, and people seemed happy with it, but I'm one of those people who likes to try and improve all the time in whatever task I'm given. So Grammarly was a tool that I installed quite early on and used that to ensure that, the spelling was correct, so grammatical constructs were correct. And I'm no expert in that space. However, I look at Grammarly and use that to understand, get a feeling of whether I'm happy with the suggestions it's making to improve my structure. Oftentimes, it's the first bad draft is where you start, and you end up with sentences which are meandering or maybe confusing when you go back and read them. And of course, Grammarly is an AI-based tool. I'm not sure if it always was, but it definitely is today.
Yeah, it is
so
now.
That's the first point I would say, is that AI has sort of come from behind and suddenly appeared in the workflow without us really thinking about it. So that's an AI element. And then, of course, ChatGPT came onto the scene. The first attempts to use that were to really just to see if it was good as people were promising, and the promise was, hey, this is going to create content for you, this is going to write for you. And in our domain, which is deep tech, engineer to engineer communication, where accuracy is absolutely important, we can't make any mistakes with regard to requirements and specification
Specs,
information, units, numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So really wanted to sort of try it out and see how skilled it was, and it was absolutely terrible. It was very easy to confuse, trip up, and at that moment in time, it was questionable about what use that tool would be. But over time, as everyone's found out, I think it's improved, and we've also got a wider array of tools on the market.
Yeah.
So I would say today, where we are, we've got ChatGPT, which I would use very much for research when Google fails me, and Google often fails us in our space because there's so little.
There's so
deep
little available
information. Yeah, so you really want to have some really good sources of information to be really sure, about the units, about the numbers, about the performance, and that's got to flow into your document to make sure it retains the trust of the reader. Well, I think if you are allowing it to affect trust, then you're missing the point a little bit. I've heard stories, where people have rejected submissions because they think they're AI generated, and I think that's just probably mostly poor management of the client supplier, the client agency relationship. As I said right at the very beginning, if you're using Grammarly, you're using AI. If you're researching using ChatGPT or NotebookLM, you're using AI. Is that inherently bad? I mean, nobody got upset when I wrote something on a keyboard and then hand wrote it and handed it in. So does it matter that I typed it in on a keyboard at some point during the creation process? I think the important thing is to start off by being honest with one another and having some sort of discussion about it, and sort of setting some broader guidelines. As I was saying before, I think if marketing departments build up a library of good quality work and start to introduce their own AI tools, which they provide access to for external suppliers, so that they can research all the knowledge and subject matter expert information that they've already collated and collected. That's obviously the best way forward, because you're saving time with the experts who are busy, and your suppliers are able to access all of your important data that and information and insights as it stands today. So you actually probably end up with a much better result. Obviously, I think we need to get away from this idea that I put in a prompt, however long it might be, into a tool, and 800 words or 1,000 words or 1,600 words plops out.
Miraculously, it's done. Job done.
Exactly. If you want to if you're doing it that just to earn the same revenue for the minimum amount of effort, then I think that's morally incorrect and it doesn't fit with me at all.
Agreed,
and if people are doing that, then that's wrong, in my opinion. And I think the as long as the checks and balances should still be there, that means that if you're working with external partners and they listen, they get your brief and it's actually good, and they provide you some reference material and that actually is relevant, and you produce some content and deliver it. If they're happy with what you've delivered, it doesn't really matter what and how you did to deliver it. It's fine. If they read it and they go, this is bland and boring and not what we expected to receive, it doesn't matter if a person wrote it or ChatGPT wrote it. It's bland and boring and should be rejected as such, with 100% guidance as to how that should be improved until the third-party suppliers fix it. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Stuart's point about how AI has crept into the tools we already use in PR is really interesting, and it backs up what the Microsoft Work Trends Annual Index tells us. Stuart's focus on accuracy in this clip highlights why B2B tech is different from B2C. In our world, AI slop, that generic AI-generated content, it's not just annoying, it's a liability that could threaten the credibility of a PR practitioner in the technical content industry. This is what researchers call the Turing trap, where AI mimics human output without the benefit of real human judgment or the ability to look at context. I explore the cost of expertise issue in more detail, as well as the risks of automating technical content creation in section 2 of the commentary. Now, let's turn our attention to our second guest, Simon. and ask him whether using AI actually makes the content production process faster.
Well, I think for original content, for that first piece of content creation, it saves only a minimal amount of time. I mean, it expedites the desk research. I mean, if we're looking at a topic and we're researching around it to create a piece of content, then desk research would often involve a kind of Google search or reading documents, etc. And that still needs to be done to some degree, but a lot of the work can be done by really AI prompts that then extract good information from an LLM.
Which you still have to check anyway, right?
Yeah,
in
for
case
sure.
it's hallucinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that you can write about a topic blindly, i.e., not knowing anything about that topic. You've got to build some knowledge about your client's technology, so that you can spot errors. Incorporating something from an LLM straight into copy without validating it is a really dangerous and silly thing to do. If the client spots it, then you lose all credibility as an agency for sure. Certainly more and more clients are contemplating doing that. I mean, they see the cost of having an external agency create content as a bottom line cost, in cost pressure times, and that gets noticed. So I think I've seen a few clients and companies where they've looked to take content creation in-house. Honestly, I don't in general I don't think it works, because they're typically leaning on AI so heavily, and also asking people whose day job isn't creating content, so maybe product managers or people working with the engineering design function at the sharp end of their company, to also create content. They don't have the time, or they don't understand how to write compelling content. They can get the facts down, the specs and everything else, but going back to the human creativity thing, again, the human creativity in agencies, good agencies, underplayed, to be able to get an interesting storyline and then do it in a really good way. So I think I've seen a few false starts, and where companies have taken in-house, sort of rub their hands together at the amount of money they think they might be saving, but then finding that they're producing no content, or content that isn't really up to the mark. Sometimes you need to let them do it, and then maybe come back with their tail between their legs at a later date. But you're right. Yeah, I think there are multiple facets to communicating technology to end audiences to drive business, and the technical understanding is one, the ability to tell a story is another. And now, over recent years, the number of channels and places that your audience goes to find information to do their job of design has broadened so much. So there are different ways to tell a story. We've seen things evolve from the humble press release and a technical article as being pretty much the landscape, to now have YouTube, we have webinars, we have blogs on site and in trade media. And so the trade media is still important, but it's a smaller part of the overall marketing pie. So you've got to put the right information told in a compelling way in the right place at the right time. So there are many elements, and an in-house team, a client's in-house team, can't do most of those unless they start hiring people who would be the people that be in the agency anyway. So
exactly,
it ends up costing them the same, and they might not fully utilize them. It's hard to predict, but I think for the foreseeable future, this ability of all the things that I've described in terms of the value of the agency, in terms of telling stories to drive, whether it's leads or revenue, whatever it might be, or brand, is going to remain. And a content specialist who understands technology and can come up with creative story angles is going to be a key part of the whole landscape. I think there's still going to be a requirement for people who understand engineering and can create content. I mean, I've heard people in our sector describe someone who's an engineer who can also write as a bit of and understand marketing as a bit of a unicorn, because stereotypically engineers are kind of interested in engineering, they're not interested in marketing. So to get people that do both is quite unusual still.
Very rare.
And I think on the point about journalists and how they work. I mean, you and I have both seen and experienced journalists who move into agency life, and agency content creators who maybe move to journalism. That's less often, and it's always an interesting thing, I think, to see how journalists take to it, because typically clients want journalists to write about them, so they're nice to them. When they come agency side, then
it's a whole new ball game.
It's a different ball game, yeah. And to some degree, notwithstanding the agency giving counsel to the client, the agency writes what the client wants them to produce rather than the freedom that journalism has. So sometimes that transition works, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't sit comfortably with the journalist. So yeah, it's an interesting one to consider.
Simon makes a great point. He sees the future of the PR leader as an architect who will need to make critical decisions about where to automate and where to keep control fully human, and where it needs a mixture of the two. As for where my career heads in the future, my capability audit showed that while I'm board ready in many aspects such as strategy, I need to make the transition from being a deliverer of content or moving from operations to a responsible architect and guide of human AI collaboration. So really leveraging more on the strategic side of things. You can check out section 3 of the commentary document for more detail on my personal leadership development plan. Ultimately, the future of work in PR isn't about being an AI evangelist. It's about being a responsible steward, someone who empowers their team to take control of the tools intentionally, rather than being just passengers jumping on the latest trend or trying to maximize output frantically in the shortest space of time. My 3-year plan focuses on leveraging my existing reputation for thought leadership and building a portfolio career as a strategic advisor. For me to succeed in the future, I need to move my focus away from my technical abilities and really flex my muscles on ethical judgment and strategic decision-making in the face of a technology that has both great potential for good and the potential to do harm to society. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes to come soon.